Today, we are going to talk about how S.E. Hinton uses examples of foreshadowing and flashbacks in our novel, The Outsiders. We'll talk about definitions of the words flashback and foreshadowing, and look at how we can find examples of each in the book. This video will help you get ready to find your own examples of foreshadowing and flashbacks in The Outsiders. A flashback is something that happened in the past. It stops what's happening in the story to move to an event that has already happened. A flashback isn't just two characters talking about the past. A real flashback brings the reader back into the past and describes the event in great detail. Authors use flashbacks to help the reader understand a character. S.E. Hinton uses flashbacks to help us understand the history between the Greasers and the Socs by talking about all the fights they had before the book even started. Flashbacks can also help us understand why certain characters act the way they do. Flashbacks can be more interesting to read because they take the reader right into the action of an important event. Flashbacks can also give us some clues about how characters might act in the future, based off of things that have already happened. The first major flashback in The Outsiders happens on pages 31 through 34 when Ponyboy remembers how the Socs beat up Johnny Cade. Ponyboy describes in great detail how he and Steve found Johnny's jacket and then found Johnny all bruised and swollen. Ponyboy goes into a flashback when he's talking to Cherry at the movies. He's trying to explain to her why the Socs and the Greasers hate each other so much. The author is also trying to get us to understand the tensions between the two groups of people. Using a flashback here helps us understand how badly Johnny was hurt and how angry the rest of the Greasers were, which helps us understand a lot of the other events that happen in this story. Foreshadowing is when the author gives the reader a clue about what will happen later on in the story. Sometimes foreshadowing is really subtle. Seeing storm clouds off in the distance could be a way of letting the reader know that something bad is about to happen. Other times, the foreshadowing is pretty direct. You may have heard of the play Romeo and Juliet, or maybe you've seen the movie version. In this play, the two main characters talk about how they'd rather die than live without each other. At the end of the play, they both end up dying. Writers use foreshadowing to make things more dramatic and suspenseful. It also gives the reader some clues about what will happen in the future. Some of the things you can look for to help you find foreshadowing include phrases that involve changes in the weather, the setting of the story, or the mood of the story. Sometimes an object will show up that seems dangerous, like Johnny's knife in The Outsiders. Sometimes characters will notice something small and mention it over and over again, or a character might repeat a phrase or a word. There's a lot of foreshadowing in The Outsiders, and one example is on page 34 when it says, "He would kill the next person who jumped him. Nobody was ever gonna beat him like that again, not over his dead body." Here, they're talking about what Johnny said after he was jumped by the Socs the first time. This quote is an example of foreshadowing because Johnny and Ponyboy do get jumped by the Socs again, and this time, Johnny uses his knife to kill Bob, just like he said he would.